the Q&A.
We should be going live about now, hopefully. Let's just refresh this and make sure.
Yeah,
helps
it's
to make
live.
sure you're actually live, you know. Boom, so we must be live, cool. Yo, hi Gedden.
Hello?
You must be absolutely relieved to have finally finished the revamp.
Well, the first step of it anyway, right?
Well, yeah, that's true. Okay, that's cool, that's going.
Yeah,
It helps
it's
to make
live.
sure you're actually live, you know.
Oh shit, who said we must be live?
Is that me that's not muted that one?
So.
Yo, hi Gedden.
Pardon?
Sorry, I'm just
Hello?
echoing back. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I've got a big list of questions. If I can just open it up, I'm gonna have
All
the
right,
checklist
let's
out
do it.
ready. We got quite a few questions, most of which will be about the revamp, but some of which will obviously be about the future and decisions you may have for the future and existing problems. And we might even have a couple of things that we've asked you before. Who knows?
Sure.
Let's wait and find out. Oh, great.
Balls, are you losing your hair?
No.
Right.
It's just a mess, as you can see. Sorry, I should have had this list up already, but I'm just opening it up now.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, I have all sorts of
While you bring that up, I just want to say
unprofessional,
thanks for doing this because, you know, any way we can communicate with the community is better. So, you know, sometimes hearing an answer or speaking it out is easier than doing a forum post or whatever else. So
Yeah,
this is
for
appreciated.
Yeah, it gives people a chance to hear the passion in your voice as well, you know. And well, oh god, my freaking. Okay, let me just rename this thread. Sorry about that.
Sensu's already posted in the stream.
Sent you posted on Pox.
Yeah.
I think he did a social media post too.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, so I've got the first question here. I may as well. Okay, so the first question was from Mortem Deuce. He wants to know if there's any plans to update the single player campaigns to reflect the changes in the revamp.
Actually, so we have yes. In fact, one of the things that we heard early on was that some of the campaigns are kind of really old and don't really flow anymore. One example, like the Triple Threat and like those intro to whatever campaigns, they are actually fake skirmish AI that someone wrote by hand like millions of years ago. So from a technical standpoint, yes, and from an execution standpoint, yes. And we actually have a for our next big push, not the patches that we're going to need to be doing now and then. We actually have some stuff planned for campaigns then too.
That's cool. Yeah, I
So,
think one of the
yes.
things with campaigns is they don't actually update with the runes, do they? They're based on.
Well, so some
coding.
do and some don't.
Okay.
The ones I'm talking about, like Triple Threat, it'll actually like have code in there that like creates a champion,
I
which
see,
is that's not the greatest way to do it.
Yeah.
The skirmish campaigns actually play decks, so we actually had an intern, 6 years ago that would make before we had skirmish AI, that would actually make the triple threats and update them that way. But once we implemented the skirmish AI, we didn't do that anymore. The end result is some campaigns are just super old and they don't reflect the current state.
Oh, it's getting DC'd. Mid-sentence.
Look at his webcam.
I'm sure he'll be back in a sec, guys. Sorry about this.
About to burn.
So does anyone here actually play campaigns? No.
No.
Back?
Oh yeah, he's back.
Yay.
Thank God for that.
As a fun side note, Desert Owl's in Arizona and or in Tucson, and apparently out of Tucson there's one massive fiber optic line, and in the last 7 years someone's backhoed it twice. So every time I lose connection for a second, I'm like, oh, some farmer just screwed me up again. Anyway, go ahead. Next question.
Yeah, well, the next.
Hopefully,
question...
hopefully the other one wasn't cut off too much.
No, we got it.
All right.
Well, the best part of it anyway. From Rajic,
Just single player.
did the total number of abilities in the game go up or down?
Way. Well, the total number of abilities.
Yeah, the actual number.
The
of
number
abilities.
that's distinct from the number of abilities on champions. I
think it means unique abilities.
I'd have to run a query to make sure. Very few abilities were removed. We did add a whole set, and we restored a whole set. For example, Rapid Attack was an ancient PoxNora ability that upped someone's attack rating, which no longer exists in PoxNora, right?
Yeah.
Nature's Balance was very old, created for druids, and it kind of also got a resurgence. That being said, all the Icar abilities are gone, and all the Rover abilities are gone.
Oh, right, okay.
Everything except one or two. I think I kept one solo ability because I liked it.
Yeah, oh, nice.
So, if I would say the answer to that question is the number of abilities went down, but that might be disingenuous because solo being gone and rover being gone are kind of
abilities, inabilities, aren't they? Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
So.
but I think just in case he meant it the other way, the abilities per champ, has that gone up or down?
That went totally down. It's a couple weeks old the last time I did a query, but I wound up heading over 5.5 per champion. So that came to where I want. The thing, if you notice, there's a hard cap in. There is actually a hard cap of base abilities, and that's 8. No champion under any circumstance has more than 8 base abilities.
Okay.
Which, there were champions that had, 13, 14 base abilities. Not talking about the avatars, which had, 16, 17. So.
Okay, so we move on to the next question, which is also from Magic. Did every champ get the same level of attention during the revamp? And he states that those with varying ranks of an ability and their upgrade choices seem to be rushed.
Okay, so every champ, I gave a minimum number of attention to every champion. The champions, now I'm not going to lie, there are certain champions like the ones with Brewmaster or whoever wound up getting more attention out of necessity. There's also some champions that just because their theme was totally overhauled. No Can Do champions got some extra attention. When it comes to the ability ranks, I don't know if I'm going to let the cat out of the bag when I say this, but there are basically 2 schools on that. So there's a whole bunch of abilities or champions where they have like unique extra choices for each ability, and there's a bunch that have ranks. So far, I've actually heard people praise and complain about both. So the idea behind the ones that have rank updates in their abilities. It's I can look at this champion, and if you're in the school of thought where you all you want are the most efficient, cheap possible champions, then you're going to go with rank 1 every time.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you're going to go for the champions where you want to have, and I know this might be a disingenuous response, Regic, but block, you always want to get block 2 because it's freaking awesome. So it depends on the champion. They weren't, I will say, it wasn't, those aren't rushed. That's totally intentional. I also have known you long enough to know you probably don't quite believe that, but that was definitely my intention. So,
well, I know from a personal point of view, I actually like having the option to take the lowest rank of an ability,
right.
or have the choice of going for the highest rank. And
it's
and I know that other people will like having a choice of different abilities, like completely different abilities that would take a champ in a whole new direction. I think it's just one of those things that is going to be, every person will disagree,
Right.
You what, Taylor?
I'm taking the cheaper cost on champions already.
Cheapest cost, yeah.
Yeah, it's my bad.
You're lagging, yeah. Taylor.
Oh.
Alright, I've got a question that quite a few people have really asked.
Poor Taylor.
Why is there such a disparity in Nora costs, with some champs costing 50 to 60 Nora and others costing 100 plus, despite not actually being that much better?
So the answer to that question is very simply abilities. I think there's a couple ways to ask that question, and I'm sure the different flavors of that are going to come up later on, and I want to talk about it. The reason their costs are the way they are now has to do with the abilities that's on the champion. I think the most expensive ability in the game is Ashes. It's probably way too much. I probably need to tone the ability down itself. But that's the one that summons two, full-sized units next to you. So what it's doing is it's saying, there's a general algorithm that says this is what stats are worth, this is what abilities are worth, and depending on your choices, as far as what the upgrades are, you get the resulting cost. So a champion with lay hands is going to be more expensive than a champion that's just got a raw beating power. I know this isn't the question that was asked, but one of the things that's been brought to my attention, some of the players, one of the things I'm getting loud and clear from the players is the high end of the scale is a little too high. So they're saying that some of the champions are more expensive than they feel they should be. So that's actually more numbers I'm crunching this weekend. Hopefully that answers the question.
Perhaps the formulas that you've got in place at the moment could be slightly altered, or do you think you'll go on a champ by champ basis?
Both. So I think I heard you guys talking about the Warog a second ago. I think for the Warog, I think the Warog's cost is a result of, the base algorithm. Which, by the way, we've always used the base algorithm to do numbers in Pox. It's just now it's been updated and we go by it more. Other champions like Ash, he costs a lot mostly because of his ability, not banditry. I can't remember. Marauder. Yeah. Forgive me. There's like 3,000 to 5,000 abilities in my head, and the names mess with me sometimes. Marauder. It went from summoning 2 level 1 champions, which has a different meaning before than it does now. Level 1, obviously. has less of a negative impact than it did before. So I think the answer is both. The big important thing that I would love to get across from this conversation, if you see a champion that you don't like, or there's an issue with it, or it's too strong, tell me about it. Go on the forums. We're going to do more of these Q&As. I'm sure we're going to wind up having individual champion questions. I want to hear what the issues are and what's going on. I do have big future plans for a lot of the things that are moving, but I want to hear what the issues are with the champions. For example, Ash, people brought up, yeah, he's expensive, and then it's for me to figure out or work on why and bring him in line. So.
No, I think that's definitely an encouraging thing to hear. You know, that you are willing to look at things on a champ by champ basis. You know,
right.
In the past, people perhaps weren't willing to go into that much detail. You know, so.
No, I think that's, and we'll get to more questions. I know you have a ton, but I think that's one of the big things. You poor guys haven't had a whole lot of attention in a long time. Part of that is. This is not like, oh, I did the revamp, right? Like we're here, we're doing more. We have more features and extras that we want to put into the game than we can shake a stick at. We have tons of stuff we want to do on the web, and I don't know if this is public or I've talked about it a whole lot, but I'm actually working with Sokolov. He helped out towards the end of the revamp. As well, there's in no way are we going to stop. We just got started.
That's good to hear, man. I think a lot of people liked the way Sokolov approached it previously. I think he had, what was it, the cactus thing? I can't remember what it was called, but the cactus thing. People like that. And I think Sokolov's definitely appreciated.
I can sing his praises all day long. So
he's stepping in a lot with the council as well, like responding to all our. Can you still not hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Was that clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
That was clear.
Should we move on to the next question then? It's from Knight Marek.
Ooh.
And he wants to know: are there any runes or factions that you have your eye on as being problematic?
The one guy that keeps coming up is Fist of Bastion. I did do some changes to him, and I think Ride Down got like some small changes that aren't really worth going into, that were kind of technical. But I keep hearing some mixed feedback on him. Yeah. Some people are praising him still, and some people are like, "Why didn't you?" I think Hostby is one of the guys who's just, he jumped through the screen and strangled me. Yeah. Now, it's everything is still up for discussion. I'll tell you what. I know this wasn't asked. There are a whole bunch of champions I still want to look at. I still want to make the heroes playable. I know a couple players are very upset about Zircon, and I don't want to have heroes in the shoebox. But it's going to take a few days to figure out where the problems are. So
definitely. I mean, there's so many changes. It's going to take us all a long time to take them in.
Right. Like the very first thing that happened, we pushed the revamp. We got into the client, and a player who will remain nameless just laid into me about Stitch First. He's terrible. What did you do? It's horrible. I'm not gonna lie. He emotionally made me feel shame. And I went to the site. I started looking at him, and while I was looking at him, he popped into a game. Used Stitch First, won, went back to the lobby, and then started auctioning, looking for one more Stitch First. So it's been like a roller. Now, I don't want to say there are not problems, because there are, and we want to address them, and I want to hear it. But it's kind of a bit of a roller coaster right now, because the game at large has changed. So
yeah, definitely. Like that's why when I first saw the revamp, I thought I'm gonna kind of rein in any thoughts and comments I have at first until I've really given it a try, you know, because when you look at something on paper, you don't always get the full story.
You know, and this is, to be truthful, this is why there hasn't been this kind of... There have been nerfs, but not this kind of nerf in a while. People... And this is humans. This is not like, oh, someone's so dumb. You know, you get really invested in a champion. You start playing with him. He's good. Maybe he's a little overpowered at the time, but he becomes one of your favorites. So when a revamp or when a change happens, or when that character gets nerfed, regardless of context, it feels like an attack on you. Like, how could they do this to me? And it's real, and it hurts, and I totally feel it. The problem is, well, it's going to take a little bit to step back and look at everything and kind of see, well, okay, the damage has gone down, his cost has gone up, or her cost has gone up, but it's still a good champion. I think that's going to be the case most of the time. That said, I'm not perfect, and Pox is not ever going to be, you know, nirvana of balance. So if you do play a character and you do find that it's not meeting your expectations, post. I want to hear it.
Definitely, yeah.
Speaking of Circin and champs costed over 100 Nora, I think when pricing champs like that, you have to take into consideration that people are not too fond of playing champs they can't deploy on the first turn.
You know, that's absolutely well said. So I know you mentioned Circin individually.
No, it's just we were talking about him. So
right, but I keep going to Ash because I think he's kind of the example. One of the things that everyone talked about was these meat champions are too cheap. Ash deploys 3 champions, and he's deploys them actually efficiently for deploying 3 champions. The thing is, I don't think that's fun. I'm sorry, what was that?
The thing is, you can more or less now deploy 3 full champions for that cost.
Right, so and they're summoned, so they're not quite as good, and you can't really pick their abilities. That said, even if I were to take Ash to 110, I'm not sure that's fun still. For exactly that point. I like the idea of having some big beaters, but I think we might have to play with some of these costs still.
It's just one of those champions.
I'm sorry?
It's just one of those champions. Like, for me, no matter what Nora it'd cost, if it was over 100, I wouldn't run it.
Right. So that's kind of a side effect, but it's definitely in our field of view.
That's what I'm saying is trending. Like, a lot of people are running champs that are pre-16 Nora. They've got like 2 or 3 abilities, but them abilities like really efficient. Like, if you look at the strategist, the 11 strategist, that is absolutely ridiculous. It's, I think, 55 Nora, and it's just so good for the
relocate ally, relocate foe, surge enemy.
Alright, yeah. We've gone over the costs quite a lot. I think we've got quite a lot of questions, so let's move on to the next one.
Alright. So we are looking at it.
But no, that is being looked into. That's cool. This one is from Goyo. I think that's how you say it. Goyo, maybe. Yeah. How likely is it to redesign some uninteresting runes to make them more viable? For example, the Narc got guarded Yeti, and this makes him runnable in Yeti decks.
Right. Very. It's actually one of my favorite things to do. So, you know, I think there's going to be a little bit of signal to noise right now because what makes a champion unused versus used. There are, in no joke, I sat down and thought of a bunch of passive themes and combos and worked them in. There are a bunch of champions that don't see play right now that should become viable. That said, if a champion winds up not getting played, I like the idea of giving them some juice and some play. So, moving forward, absolutely. I think the dust has to settle a little bit, but so we know which champions, are good and bad now. But absolutely, I love doing that.
Yeah, and a good comment in the Twitch chat just now from Daman Boya. He said you might want to look into the map pool. The reason you cannot run any champions over 100 Nora is because of the map font layout. If you want people laying champions with that higher cost, you need a map where the opponent cannot easily gain that font advantage.
Right, and maps seem to come up each time. It's literally just a matter of throughput. So, like I said, we're working with Sock, who is awesome. Maybe we'll kind of try to direct him in on that, just because I know there's a lot of unit balance that's needed to be played with. Another thing, I know this is not necessarily maps, but another idea is from one difference from the ancient times to now is Nora fonts actually give less Nora than they did originally, and your shrines generate more than they did originally, which means you don't get as much boost of playing on a bigger map. Yeah. So that's up in the air too. I don't want to commit to that, but that's also on my mind. Did my video freeze?
Your cam froze, yeah.
The problem with fixing the higher Nora cost champs by looking at the maps is, though, that you will get slower gameplay because you will have to make the maps bigger so you can't that easily be rushed, and
do you not think
it would kind of change the nature of the game, in my opinion.
Do you not think
sure you can, but in competitive play, if there was 50% chance that I was going to get rushed when I deployed my 115 Nora champ, I wouldn't run it.
Well,
that's not even. Sorry, go on.
Well, I would say, I think maps do need to be considered, but I think the issue is it's not something you can count on, because we're not going to make every map big, and we're not going to make every map small. So it's more difficult to build a battle group that works in both if that's the only solution. I think maps could be part of the solution, but I think at most it's going to be part of it.
No, I don't feel like there should be a deck that works on all maps perfectly, but in my decks I look at what champions versatile for all situations.
Jeepers 2 says slow gameplay is what he likes. So not everyone has the same opinion on it.
Right.
One other question in the chat from Kazikuro914 wants to know if elevation on maps is going to play a higher role, and for example, would a ranged champ get a damage bonus in the future when attacking from higher ground?
Oh no.
So I'll tell you what. One of the things
don't
that
make it more complicated.
Well, I used to think that was the coolest idea in the universe. One of the things we did in Void Rim was we actually had full-scale 3D targeting, where it was like targeting domes, and you could do pixel-perfect kind of attacks. So there was actually attenuation for damage and attack range, and you could fire down off cliffs at a longer distance.
That's not a bad idea at all.
It was so...
No, it was just too much complexity.
I spent so much time getting that working, and when I was done, I was like, oh my god, this winds up being totally not fun. Because you wind up doing a lot of technical... you your characters around and playing with the map heights, and you wind up playing a targeting system minigame. So I would say for Pox, definitely not. Just because the experience I had trying it, it sounds so cool, but wound up not working as much as I would like it to. I think the elevation stuff that we have, I like it when it's flying versus not flying, because you kind of get that feeling, but you can also, it's also a little easier to grab onto. So I have some ideas for the Storm Clan-ish barbarians to getting a little bit more of that in the future.
Cool.
As a note.
So next question, Banshee X wants to know how much influence did the player council have on the final form of runes?
That's I'm not sure how to answer that. 12. They certainly, the council was hugely influential over time. Taking account this was a big process, and there was a lot to do. There were, we're talking about 1,300 champions got changed.
We focused a lot more on bugs more than the actual champion itself. Well, I think anyway. A lot more bugs were reported than obviously the overpoweredness or underpoweredness of champions.
Right, and I think early on the council actually played a really big role in talking about changing up themes. So we would talk about what is acceptable in the game, what's not acceptable in the game. It's stuff that doesn't sound very sexy, but it wound up being hugely important. So, like the no can do change, we went through 100 million things. It's thinking back about how many times we went back and forth. It's like I want to throw up. It was so much work. The same for the barbarian racials was a lot of back and forth. So I'd say for bigger meta things, they played a bigger role. But the council is 8 people. The council could have been every single person in PoxNora, and we, as far as the final form of like, should this guy have 7 damage or 8 damage, there wasn't a whole lot of that. So there will be, I think, but not just from the council, but from players in general. But hopefully that answered the question.
Jibtech wants to know, as a quick follow-up to that, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much did Dagda drop the ball?
Actually, you know what? No, because
11.
He would have dropped the ball if he bailed and didn't tell us. But he was like, I can't keep doing this, and we had other people in line. So the truth is, it doesn't do, being on the council stuff. I remember when we were first talking about it, like, oh man, they gotta decide everyone's little stats. Most of what happened on the council was, we would talk about something that seemed innocuous or boring to death, or I would post something and just watch how much they cried, and then go from there. It was am I painting a good picture?
Sorry?
Well, Taylor's here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, what?
So, is that accurate, would you say?
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's kind of how it worked.
Yeah, Markov says that wasn't Dagda, that was Burn. And then Dagda.
Yeah, that was Burn, not Dagda.
Oh, right.
Burn's the Belgian kid. Yeah, anyway.
So he has got to do one thing.
From Moving Target, in the coming patches, will we see efforts to re-establish themes that were severely weakened by the revamp?
Okay, I'm so glad someone asked that question. I'll tell you, the big thing that's hit me is it's not... when some players say the word theme, what they mean is the word racial.
Mm.
And I think there was a breakdown. So the two I would bring up would be creep and crawl as a theme. That's been one that I've been getting a lot of comments on.
Yeah.
I consider that creep and crawl is not a racial. It's not on every arthropod carte blanche, right? The idea was we have creep and crawl as an upgrade option on a bunch of the spiders, so the spiders aren't finger quoted sandbagged into only being viable in creep and crawl focused battle groups. What I think happened was it's a bit of a mixture of nostalgia. Oh, I loved those guys, and some people truly felt it was more appropriate as a racial. So I think what I need to do, I haven't completely decided yet. I feel like what I need to do is look at some of the themes that were what I'm going to call simple themes.
Yeah.
That's just like maybe all the UD spiders do have creep and crawl as a base.
Yeah.
And then maybe scatter some creep and crawl on champions as upgrade options in different factions for splits, and just kind of make it a more overt one. Now, the second part of that, I think, is Farron Focus. Farron Focus was a simple theme. It was on all Farron. Farron Focus actually got rolled into the No Can Do and Discipline themes. Now, they're not racial themes. They're kind of ability themes. And there is... I should find it. Sock actually wound up drawing like a tiered chart for how they all come together. There are some neat spell relic ability combos with the Farrons and other No Can Do champions. I think and I'm not saying that's what this player is saying, but certainly some players are saying, hey, Farron Focus is gone. There's no more Farron theme.
Yeah.
The truth is, they got rolled into a much larger, much more dynamic theme. And it's actually a theme, not a racial. So I think for the No Can Do Farron one, I think that's still in solid shape, and I want that to percolate a little more. That said, I think for like the Underdepth Spiders, I might address that directly. In fact, I think I will just kind of put creep and crawl on the basis.
Yeah, I think another one that I've had a lot of mentions about is the creepers in FW, and a few people are mentioning that in the chat now. Ficule says, for the record, there's only around seven or eight champs with creep, and I believe the way creep works, you have to actually have the ability for it to gain the buff, so
right.
That might need looking at as well, I guess.
Yeah, that was it's funny that was liked so much. I just didn't see it as fun or good, but apparently, I've heard a couple comments about it as well. So what I think is true is, themes are popular, racials are popular, with the exception of creepers, which did kind of get directly hit. The intention wasn't to weaken a theme. It was to either actually make it a theme or actually make it a racial. Like the Yetis and their Yeti senses. Abominable. Sorry, I forget the name, right? I've actually gotten cursed at, and I've gotten thank yous for that theme. So we'll let that one percolate. That said, if you really love a theme that you feel is now weaker, and you go through the game and you play it, and the result is, hey, this is a weaker theme, post it. That's probably got more of my attention than anything else, and will for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, Ficule just wants to point out, in case you're not aware, the way creep works is that anything you deploy without creep reduces your deployment zone. So obviously, having not enough champs with creep makes it kind of redundant to have it on any champ, because it will reduce your deployment zone.
I mean, Ficule, did you actually play creep? Because I looked at stats, and it didn't seem like it was a well-played theme. Am I just off?
Yeah, well...
not many people played it, no.
I barely ever played it. I played against a couple of champions
I didn't see much
that had creep.
I've got to admit, yeah.
It just didn't seem good enough to keep. But that doesn't mean it should go away. If you liked it, I'll take a look.
Yeah, I mean, even you could look at perhaps redesigning it, you know.
I will say this: with the expansion, I fully plan on doing a lot more formal work with vampires and a lot more formal work with witches. That's coming. So that might not be a patch update thing, because I think it requires a little more attention than a hotfix would do. But definitely, I want to do something with witches. Definitely, I want to do something with vampires. And you're right.
Yeah, we better move on. So Jewel says, why did so many champs lose the ability Shatter or Detection? Few champs now have these abilities, and the ones that do apparently have no speed.
It was added to some other champs like Skelly Lerpa has Detection now.
Right. There are exactly 60 champions in PoxNora with Detection. I'd have to double check and see how many there were before. But it was a bit of a give and take. I think what might be happening here, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I think some of the champions that used to be your
go-to guys.
Right, they're go-to guys. Like, hey, he does 20 things and Detection, and everything else. Those guys tend not to have it anymore. That's true.
Just things like the Marsh Troll and the Priestess, like them two alone, they're like good examples.
Right. So it's still pretty prolific, but it's just not. It's something that you have to go for. It's all part of the idea of you have to think a little bit about your deck when you want to put it together. You tend to want some kind of shatter ability. You tend to want some kind of detection at least in some form. For Yetis, you can actually use your racial. It's kind of more of an indirect detection, but it would work for it. So that said, if I hear, hey, we don't have enough detection capabilities in Shattered Peaks anymore, then I'm not going to not listen to that.
Just on a quick note, as a couple of people have mentioned it in the Twitch chat, and on the rune checklist at the moment, you cannot actually see what the potential upgrades are. Is that something you're going to be fixing?
That's a bug.
Please.
We had that working, and there was some there were some issues with some of the fulfillment stuff, like when the rune views, and then it wound up kind of eating that. But that's on Cortesy's list.
So that will be fixed in the near future.
Absolutely.
That's cool, because a lot of people.
There's no intention for you guys not to see the upgrades of the champions in the checklist. It's not a surprise.
Yeah, because at the moment, obviously, whereas the other websites which used to have all the data from the XML are currently outdated.
Right.
And unless you own the champs, you can't actually see, when you want to put a deck together, what abilities it has. So a lot of people are struggling to put decks together at the minute, I guess.
Yeah, as a note, one of the things we did is update Cortesy's did is update the XML feed for the new format of data. So I imagine it's going to take these guys a little bit to, conform to that. We also changed how we do ability descriptions, which I thought was going to get pretty well received, but I haven't heard a single comment on it. It's going to take.
Yeah,
those
I noticed it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah.
Like a highlighted ability and a box next to it.
Well,
I think
I wasn't
that will
searching for a
help.
compliment or anything, but I think
Just to help the new players.
It's not just. It's actually when I first started working on that individually. I was like, well, I can just do a database replacement, a string comparison, and see, whenever we say pacified brackets, here's what pacified does. I'll just replace it with the new syntax, have it pop up. We had pacified in 30 or 40 different spells and abilities, and it never repeated the same description twice.
Wow. Yeah.
There were actually abilities that referenced the attack stat for pacified.
Yeah.
Which hasn't existed in PoxNora in 7 years.
Yeah, so I guess it's a slow process of going through every ability and just getting them all in that standard format, isn't it?
Right, and so I think it's going to take the third party. We gave them the tools they want. I love the third party sites. I use PoxBox or PoxBase all the the time. I have it bookmarked.
Yeah.
So
that's good. That's funny to hear. That, actually, yeah.
you have to. This is what you should do. So anyway, we can keep going.
A few people are commenting on that in the chat. Ficule said, "To be honest, I love it," and he also assumed that people knew it was awesome. And Fatty2K says, "As someone who has not been very active till now, those have actually been hugely helpful for him."
Cool. And then I think if you guys like that stuff, you're gonna like more things that's coming. So cool.
Yeah, that's good. So from Bag of Trick, he wants to know, what are your intentions for swarmers, summoners, and spells or relic that summon cheap meat, as they seem to have taken a buff due to the reduction of damage across the game, making them harder to deal with, as well as gaining the upgrades as the default abilities.
Yeah. There's a little bit. What are your intentions with my daughter? I haven't thought that far. Ring. So definitely, when it comes to the meat abilities, we started off addressing it. We're actually getting a lot of negative feedback because of some of it, aka Ash. That said, you're not wrong. There are. I think there's no way to address that without saying it's part of kind of the larger game in itself. It's going to be considered along with everything else. I have a hard time lumping it into one category. I think specifically when it comes to those meat champions, it's going to have to be taken on a case-by-case basis. So I know Zuo internally, our artist, she was playing a deck with the Furball Mother, and she wound up beating me, actually, which it was unexpected for everyone but her, but she's kind of becoming a badass. Anyway, I haven't seen any comments on the Furball Mother. I actually still think she's fine. So I guess ad hoc is my answer to that. If I hear from you in particular, or players on the forums that, hey, this guy has a problem, this guy has a problem, I'd address it. Pygmy Hippo Stampede actually was one that was just kind of like, that was nuts. So in how it was doing,
it's still rather buggy.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let me.
I've gone through.
We're done with this. Let me know how. Part of the problem was it was doing a whole lot of things it wasn't saying it did. and internally it was half old and half broken. And there's a lot of spells, especially more recent ones, that say they do something, but actually did something else. I can't remember what it was called. The one that got renamed Discipline of the Northern Wind. It does now what it said it did, and a little bit better. What it did before, it was an AoE, like it was just an AoE with knockback. It was almost like, well, you guys know. So the descriptions didn't match the abilities. What I did was with that one, which is a meat summoner, I basically just had it conform to what it said, and there were some bugs with it, but now it's apparently it's got a bug, but now it actually says what it does. It deploys the guys, gives them 5 hit points, gives them 5 AP, gives them Feeding Frenzy, and all that stuff is linked and explicit. So
Yeah.
hopefully that wasn't the longest, windingest answer in the universe.
Anyway, next question then is from Jewel. What's the plans for the range game? Oh, hang on, my screen's gone off. What's the plans for the range game? It looks like the game is being played melee now, and it looks hopeless to get ranged units back.
Well, so I'm going to address the second part first. Nothing is hopeless. Everything is on the table.
Yeah.
I haven't left. Apparently, my webcam has, but we're not gone. We're still addressing things.
Yeah.
I actually haven't heard a single person talk about how much was changed with ranged yet, and a lot was.
It seems to be the champs with a 3-gap range, like 2 to 5 range, or like 3 to 6. They're the really expensive ones compared to like 3 to 4 or 4 to 5.
Right. Well, actually, there were one of the biggest things that happened with the more recent champions. It's not so much that they were, they would have big ranges, right? They'd have a 6 max range, but they'd have like a 2 min range or a 3 min range.
Yeah.
So you have guys hitting 3 to 6, which is a lot. Now the guys that were 3 to 6 tend to be 5 to 6, which it's a big hit to ranged. That said, ranged has always been a problem in the game.
Yeah.
Being able to hit far away is huge.
The champions that have been left with like a 3 or 4 gap range are really, really expensive now.
Right.
That's why people are complaining, I think.
Well, yeah, it could very well be. I think it's we have a lot of variables because I think, like I said, I'm going to be doing some analytics on the calculation for cost. And I think if once that's done, if we get more comments on range, we'll do it. I'm very surprised. To me, that was one of the biggest things that changed, and it's the thing that I've heard the least about so far. So
I think it's something that a lot of people will talk about more and more as time goes on.
Right, and everything is still on the table. I think if you're using the term, I would get away from the idea that it's hopeless because there is hope. We are changing. I think like Kathir is going to feel that a little more than Underdepths will. But there were definitely eras in PoxNora where if you weren't running a ranged champion, you were wasting your time. So that's from a design standpoint, that's very easy to fall into.
Yeah, Ficule says, I love that range isn't the most dominating force anymore, to be honest.
Cool.
UD can feel it, because Goblin Archer, their only good ranged option, has been nerfed to the ground. And now they have literally no range.
Look at Cyclonic Fish.
No melee.
That's gone from 6 range to 2.
2x2 melee tank for what, 85 Nora?
An interesting response to what you just said, Gillo. Hubers says, is Gedden bringing UD back to its roots or something? Range being
That's-
rare and melee being the main goal in UD.
That's
In
basically
pocket.
the idea. And actually, Sock and I had a long kind of conversation about some of this stuff. The problem is if you make it more than rare, what winds up happening is if you have enough champions to build a ranged UD deck, then you have enough champions to do it. So there is a bit of an experiment going on there. That said, what should happen is if I have my UD run up, my UD beater run up to your unit, he should be able to just chew him in half. Them not having range does make them more susceptible to range, which is why they have some of the best anti-range capabilities. So specifically thinking of Demon Shield, but you guys know there's more.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so Bag of Trick wants to know, are there any intentions to allow an option not to take an upgrade for a cost reduction?
No. We're not thinking of that. I don't say no very often. That said, for certain champions, we have low cost or zero cost options. But if we were to have, certain champions have, they're picking between upgrades that cost, from 12 to 18 Nora. So they're kind of the intention is for them to at least take one of those. If we were to take all the upgrades off, I think you'd wind up having some champions that would just get so raw and cheap. It would be not ideal. So when we do have champions that we want to do that with, we have a mechanic to do that, which is to put a zero cost ability or a negative cost ability, like Skirmisher or Pariah or one of the 50 million others, Easy Target, etc., etc.
Yeah,
Vulnerabilities.
So, personally, that's one of the things that I thought. One of the first thoughts I had when I saw the revamp was, am I being forced to take an ability? Why wouldn't we have the option, I guess, to be able to take no upgrade? But I can kind of see it from what you're saying as well, and that it's, to kind of control the costs a bit. Yeah,
that's what it is, and that goes back to what we were mentioning for Rajik's question, Rajik's question. When a guy has 3 ranks of Rend, that exists for someone who wants something super cheap. I mean, take into account rank 1 of Rend, I think costs 1 Nora. It's nothing. Anyway.
Yep, and I've got a question here from various people again, which I'm sure you've probably already heard somewhere. Are you going to take another look at Moga? They seem like they slipped through.
Yeah, well, they didn't slip through, but I think what happened to them wasn't cool. Not cool. I think they need more attention. And I know in the player council forums that's a big thing. So the answer to that is yes.
Cool.
That's going to be coming up soon. I'm really, really, really looking forward to seeing some analytics over the weekend on some of the themes and what gets nailed down there. But addressing the Moga is a big part of that, or a big one. I'm also on that list, real high.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so from Nightmaric, he wants to know: do you have ideas of how you're going to revamp certain spells, and thus did those ideas influence the direction of the current power of runes in the revamp?
Some yes, some no, and some slid through the cracks. So there are certain spells that I definitely see that I want to do something with, let me be more clear on that. There are certain spells that I have ideas on that I want to see things shake out, and I want to paint things off before I do things with. So, like, I have some ideas with Ambush. I know that's not the most sexy spell in the world. There are some things that said, I think what I want to do with spells and relics is roll them out in patches rather than do them all at once, just so it's a little easier to digest. Because I think this is a big pill to swallow so far for the revamp. I think.
Yeah.
We had to change the upgrade systems. We had to do them all at once. I think for spells, relics, and equipments, we can do them piecemeal. I know for equipments, one of the things I don't like that equipment refund if you deploy it on a specific champion. I tend not to like that. Just because as the game grows, having that one champion becomes less interesting, and having it be able to get used on a certain race class combo is more interesting to me. So there might be refunds and stuff with that. So I do have ideas, more tangible ideas for relics. And what I mean, so that was kind of the past. The present is I'm addressing things as they come up. So, for example, Tales of Valor got an update today, which just kind of capped the base damage upgrade at 8 and the base defense upgrade at 3. And I want to see how that plays out. To me, that's just kind of a basic sanity check. But my plans actually were to do something with Tales of Valor to go into the whole drunk theme, but I didn't want to pull out that from being viable on Barbarians, so that's where it is now. So that's the middle. The third thing I mentioned was some slip through the cracks. The things that I updated were things that dealt with the upgrade system as they existed before. Yeah. So 3 Wishes got a change. One that I didn't update was Blood Rage, the spell. Which as a side note, I hate it when we have abilities and spells named the same thing. Yeah. Because in case it wasn't confusing enough. So that one got changed to War Chief Inauguration. And that is now a combo with the War Chief, which was a plan before, but it slipped through the cracks. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. So another question from Jewel, and he said, why have you taken basic attacks away from certain champs, such as the Dwarven Mortar Crew or the Grintmore Bouncer? Was that intentional?
So, there were some champions that didn't have basic attacks that were supposed to, and to be clear, it's not that I was watching Game of Thrones too much to pay attention to the screen. What happened was we needed to write tools to allow us to convert a lot of the data from one format to another. Before, I couldn't wait until the tool was finished before I started. So I had a spreadsheet, and then we literally had Senshu manually enter in things that were from one system to another. I'm not blaming him. I manually did stuff too. Whenever you do stuff manually, things tend to get missed. So I know there were a few champions that didn't have a basic attack that should have.
Oh, so I think I just looked at the bouncer and it seems to now have a basic attack. So that's now
the council also covered a lot. Well, covered a lot of them bugs, but
right.
A few still slipped through, obviously.
Right, a few still slipped through, and you know what? We're gonna find one in 2 months that we didn't even think about. It's just how it works. That said, the Grintmore Bouncer went through a few rotations of design. He went from a beater to his flavor text actually changed too. He went from a beater to a tank to a damage dealer, back to a beater, and then he became an attrition tank. which is the idea of he doesn't do damage. He just runs out there and stands there, and he causes chaos. And the fact that he's around you hurts things. He was basically some form of attrition tank, but so he actually was not supposed to have an attack physical. And Sokolov and I talked a lot about him, but I don't think it worked. So I just kind of put an attack physical on him, and the response I got was, "Yay, he's playable again." So we'll see. We haven't seen the last of him just because he kind of breaks a few paradigms now that he has the basic attack. But I love the Gritmaw race. They're really cool. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of him in the future.
Okay, so if anyone is worried about certain champs not having a basic attack or anything confusing like that, make a thread on the forums.
Yeah. Post, send us, let us know. So,
okay, so Explosivo wants to know if you are willing to post the Nora value you've given to each ability and stat, so the players can see for themselves and make suggestions as to where it can perhaps be improved.
I'm torn on that, and I'll tell you why. I did it for the council. And that's one thing the council did weigh in a lot on.
Right.
I would want to, because then everyone would see it, and I'm sure we'll wind up getting some good responses. I don't want to because I know it's going to be a big point of contention.
Yeah.
The truth is, at the end of the day, we can only go with one stat, like I said, right now, when you're trying to play favorites with something, we'll wind up getting people.
A lot of people will be biased.
Yeah.
It's part of its bias, and here's so what we did for the councils. We literally had a sheet where I had the base cost, I had kind of what I was thinking. And then the council guys would post, and most of the time, I picked something kind of in the middle of all the council suggestions if it wasn't there already. But the problem with when you start getting to hard numbers like that is we're not just going to get a online fight between 5 and 12 Nora for an ability. We'll get an online fight between 5 and 6 Nora for an ability, right? And it just here's the thing, and I don't want to start painting a picture like I'm saying, oh, the players are not gonna whatever. I don't want them to get stuck on that because the other things that they have to say I consider extremely valuable. So it's kind of like I want to hear what you're having a problem with. Not 5 Nora, 6 Nora, 5 Nora, 6 Nora. So I still might do it, but I just wanted to I'm laying out what my concerns are.
Yeah, I think like you say, I think having the council with that sort of access and keeping an eye on those sort of costs is probably enough, because they're kind of more deliberately focused on that.
Right.
Whereas players can be bringing more of the general issues rather than worrying about, whether it should cost 5 or 6 Nora,
Right. Right.
What do you think, Taylor? Do you agree?
I just think people will see an ability on the champion that they like and think, right, I want that champion to be even better.
I mean,
a lot of players will just look at it like that.
Certainly, when I looked at a few champs yesterday in Iron Fist, I did notice that, for example, Surge Enemy, which gives you generally a lot of damage, seems to
That's
only
one of
cost
the big
around
problems
4
at the minute.
Nora,
Yeah.
which seems like it may be undercosted. So I guess at the time I should make a thread saying, should Surge Enemy cost more?
No, yeah,
and then you can get
that's
the
right.
council
Surge
to look
should
at
be.
it, etc. So
Right.
if
Yeah.
people are worried about abilities like that, I think that's probably what they should do anyway.
No, I'm totally for that. And I know that there are actually some abilities that do need more cost attention, like some of the charge abilities don't cost what they should. But that's a whole different thing with the charge mechanic. Anyway, cool.
Okay, so the last current revamp question is from Jibtech, and he wants to know if the amount of negative and knee-jerk backlash. Is the amount of negative knee-jerk backlash against the revamp on par with what was expected?
I'm always surprised. Always. So, like I said, I think it's a mix of some things. The big thing that surprises me is how much some people hate it and how much some people love it. Yeah. It is that split.
People just need to get used to it. 'Cause it's a totally different meta, totally different game,
and
play style and everything now.
Right, I get that. The thing that gets me, I cannot pronounce his name, Bikoski. I can't say his name. You know who I'm talking about. He posted a thread where he was upset about stuff, he's a player that I always see as super reasonable. So I guess so. I'm kind of going around. I'm always surprised by the reactions because there's no way to predict where things are going to go. I know that there are changes that have to be made, and I try to take things with a bit of a grain of salt as well when it comes up. That's the truth be told. That's actually the hardest part of this job, because whenever you make a change, people are going to be happy and sad, and in general. And I think more so now, just because of the culture for the game in the last few years. I'm searching for my words here. When we post a change, especially more so under SOE. I think players felt like they had to rattle the cage to get a reaction. Yeah. You don't have to rattle the cage. I'm totally here and I hear it. That being said, we're talking about people looking at runes that they've felt deeply for since childhood. So the reactions are going to be visceral, and I get it.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's what it is. People actually grow attached to the runes they run, and the runes they've run for years, perhaps, And when you change them, people are like, oh my god, I now can't use this, and it takes a long time to get used to it. But
Another thing is because the game's also been left for ages, so the people have made decks, and the deck's not been nerfed, so they've had that deck for months.
Right, and you get a sense of, and this is not negatively so, but you get a sense of entitlement. Like, this is my guy, and I get it, and I understand it. And the truth is, this kind of patch hasn't happened in a very long time. It used to happen often, so there'd be more expectations for it. Exactly. So, there's been a couple times where I had to turn around and talk to the guys, oh my god, I just got called the most horrible thing in the universe. But it happens, and I know it's going to happen. I can laugh it off, but it hurts me, guys. Yeah, no, it's just it's funny. I'll tell you what else. So what I mean when I say I'm always surprised, I never would have expected this much of a disparity. People loving it, people hating it. I think it's going to normalize in a week. And I think also when people realize, if they go on the forums and they say, hey, this guy is broken, I play with him, he's not good, and they see changes, I think that's going to be a big deal because that hasn't happened in a long time. On the other end of that, I remember there was a patch we did in PoxNora when we removed the element of random.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because there used to be a whole deal.
Patch used to miss and critically hit and all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It was so controversial that we thought we were going to lose so many players when we did that change. We had developers talking about quitting because they thought it was going to be so terrible, and not a single person talked about it. We didn't have a single player post in the entire community.
That's shocking.
We are always surprised about what gets talked about. So,
okay, the next question, which is, we're kind of moving on to the more of what you plan in the future now, and it was a question that I put up myself just to get the ball rolling. Now that you've finally completed the revamp, what are your next priorities?
Okay,
Just started the revamp.
Well,
Yeah,
that's actually a good thing. So internally, this is kind of how we do how we prioritize things. We always make a plan for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and long term. We always have one. There's always a feature list that's too long for us to ever get to.
Yeah.
What we do is we say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get these features out. We're going to hit this milestone. And then, we plan what we're going to do next after that. But when we get to that milestone, we then replan because context changes. So the plan right now for the next group, we kind of have a bit of a surprise coming. We want to, do a little bit of new content without, before too long. But so that was sufficiently vague, I guess.
Yeah, very, very.
But the plan is initially we're doing what's called firefighting for the next 2 or 3 weeks, which is we're doing nothing but looking at the game, getting feedback, changing it. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, bugs, etc. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Balancing.
Bugs, balance, changes, redos. Because you got to understand, one thing that we can do now that they couldn't do before is it takes us 10 minutes to make a new ability. So if that's what it takes to fix something, we will, or tweak one or change one. We have that the no code change stuff isn't a barrier for us. So anyway, the next 3 weeks we have planned out to do that. Our next milestone, we're going to be doing. I don't want to go into details for it, but I'm really friggin' stoked. We're calling it the Nux update, but it's way more than that. So there's kind of like we want to do more daily style stuff. We want to update the lobby. We want to update
live ranks.
Some of the player flow. There's going to be a lot more, unlocking of things for new players. And then this is not a secret. We've been talking to Steam for a long time. So the idea is to kind of do that stuff next. Cool. And once that's ready, and I'm not giving a timeline on that, we do have one internally, but we don't announce it because, we might have our next feasibility in 3 weeks and decide our priorities change.
Yeah, of course,
But, that's kind of what's coming with that.
Cool. I think we did actually have a question about the Steam relaunch. So that's still the plan then, basically.
That's still the plan. And then once we're up on Steam and once we have even more of this new Nux stuff and there's more new player style interactions, then we'll start doing all the advertising and marketing stuff that we want to do.
Cool.
So.
Okay, so from Raid Officer I'm a Girl. Who's echoing?
Hey.
Who's echoing? Echo. Alright, cool. From Raid Officer I'm a Girl. Do you have plans to expand new races added by the late Sony expansions?
Yeah, there's yeah. So first of all, the next expansion that we have, we're redoing the runes themselves, but they had all the artwork drawn, and some of it is just fantastic. So this next expansion, Ronin, is that's going to obviously expand on some of the ones that already existed. There are some races that I really like, and there are some themes that I really like. Beyond that, the expansion 26, which is after Ronin, we already have a bunch of runes for that expansion, and it kind of expands on some of the themes that we've implemented, and it kind of expands on some of the themes that Sony put in. I liked some of that stuff. Like I just mentioned now, I like the Gritmaw. I think he's really cool. And there's a few more in there. That said, once we get a little closer to that, I don't want to start talking about, hey guys, 2 expansions from now, what do you want to see? But I will say this: if you have some things that you'd like to find out about, drop me a line. Let me know. I'm afraid to say do a forum post because right now I'll kind of get buried because we're focused on Revamp. But once things calm down, I'd like to hear it because, we, like I said, we like to plan this stuff out way in advance because it takes the artists a while to draw them. So.